I want to ask a couple of questions, and then a vote has been called, and we'll bring this hearing to a conclusion. First of all, Ms. Mason, Senator Blackburn asked you about Inspector General's report. Are there any particular reports that are pending on this topic of disability that you would like to highlight that would be important for the VA to come into compliance or explain why they are not pursuing the Inspector General's recommendations?
Well, we have about 30.
All of them equal importance, and all of them on this topic?
All of them equal important, but I think we have 2 or 3 particularly that are pending on disability issues, but we have some audit work that we're getting ready to start, primarily around quality review, primarily around automation, particularly, and concerns we have around whether the right information is in the automation system. And then again, to the reports we've already discussed today on PACT Act and a couple of the other areas in disability that our fraud teams and our audit teams work very closely together. And so where they see gaps on either side, they trade information, and the fraud team goes and investigates, and the audit team does their audit work. So we do have some others teed up. We only have a couple of reports, though, that are pending, and they are primarily on the quality aspect as well as the application of overall disability review.
In your previous life and previous work at the Department of Veterans Affairs, anything that you learned in that capacity that would be important for us to hear today?
Well, Chairman Moran, you know, in my current seat, I look at everything through the eyes of the IG. But what I can tell you in looking at those through the eyes of IG, I can look back over the 30 years from starting as a young attorney in 1990 going forward to my time as judge and chairman, where I can see many of the things that VA put in place, that the Congress has put in place, and I see the impacts and effects of that on our veterans. And particularly what I see is the lack of controls and the lack of oversight within actually all of VA, but particularly for this hearing, particularly in VBA, in particular areas from compensation to education to pension to fiduciary. We can go down the whole list.
I want to highlight, at least from my view, a great level of respect for the role of the Inspector General, the role of the Government Accountability Office in this committee and this Congress being able to do its work. I'm developing a good working relationship with you, Ms. Mason, and I had a really good working relationship with your predecessor. And my view is that the efforts by both of these agencies are hugely valuable to the well-being of veterans that we all try to serve.
And we do talk to each other often, Chairman Moran, both you and I and Ms. Curta and her team.
Thank you both. Mr. Gallucci, you did something just a moment ago that I was going to ask you to do. I wanted to know what a member of the service believes when they enlist, that their contract is with the United States government, with the Department of Veterans Affairs, with the American people, with our country, with our government. When someone raises their hand and takes the oath and enters the service, what is it that they expect in return?
To put it in the simplest terms, that if we're going to live up to these other requirements, to obey all lawful orders, subject to the military justice system, serving in combat and other hazardous situations, that will be taken care of if something goes wrong on the government's time and on the government's dime. I point in the Washington Post story, we've talked about this a lot, about them talking about toenail fungus, right? That was in there designed to really bait people into thinking, well, that's common. That happens to a lot of Americans. You go to a gym, you get athlete's foot, you treat it with some Tenactin. I don't know. But the issue is we're talking about military service, especially ground forces, Army, Marine Corps, that focus so heavily on foot health and hygiene. Because when I was deployed to Iraq, OIF-1, living out of a Humvee for the first couple of months, personal hygiene was sparse and difficult. And I talked to a veteran before coming into this hearing who has dealt with a systemic fungal infection since he served in the Marine Corps. This is very real. It's an occupational hazard. It may sound odd to someone who's never served, a reader of the Washington Post, or a reporter who never raised their right hand, but that's why it's service-connected. A veteran who's on a medication that causes liver damage because it started out as a foot fungal infection, started as toenail fungus. Yes, that's service-connected. It's related to service, and it's a clear occupational hazard of military service.
Thank you. And do those individuals, they recognize, know that at the moment they enlist and raise their right hand?
You don't know all of them, but I'll tell you this: we know the military is dangerous, right?
Right.
Its job, as our Secretary of War says, is to destroy our enemies. I mean, we know it's dangerous going in, but we believe that with the contract that we signed, if something goes wrong, that we will be taken care of.
Dr. Gade raised this topic of work, and I certainly share a view that work is important to the well-being of every human being. It is a way we earn a living and get satisfaction, hopefully, from what we do. I always think it's something that's within us that gives us purpose in life, soul, a sense of meaning and value. What is it that we can do? Dr. Gade indicates that there's a seemingly a disincentive from the disability system to work. But aside from that suggestion, of that connection, there's a lot of things that the Department of Veterans Affairs is entrusted to do and should be doing to help veterans find meaningful employment. And I saw where a group of Fort Riley soldiers who were about to end their time in the military service spent time in Wichita, Kansas at the aviation and aircraft companies learning about opportunities for their future. There is a significant demand for the skill set and integrity, the moral values of a soldier, of a member of our military. There's demand for that work. And yet we may not be taking the sufficient advantage of the opportunity that a person who is leaving military service can provide value to a company. I love it when we've got a program in Kansas to interest soldiers as they depart in agriculture, to become farmers. There's a demand for those kind of employment opportunities, what are we missing in trying to make certain that work is honored, aside from the suggestions of Dr. Gade?
If I could,
Mr. Villanueva?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
I was worried you were being ignored until Senator Duckworth captured
No, I
you.
appreciate it. There's a lot of good panelists here, and I definitely don't want to step on anybody's toes when it comes to, how much we all agree with each other. But the one thing I think everybody on this panel can agree with is that every veteran who wants to work and is inhibited by a disability, that they have every incentive and opportunity to get to work. And again, I guess I have to be 100% for all the hearings I ever testify at to bring up VR&E. But VR&E should definitely be pushed more so than most any other program that they have out there for veterans who want to get back out to work. And that includes doing things like removing delimiting dates. That goes for education by the VA to all veterans to say, hey, especially those who are being medically discharged or medically retired, to push that program and to say, if you want to get back out to work, it is available to you. And, we've been on record about this. So, we would love to work with, yourself, your office, the rest of the members of the committee to see, how we can do that.
Remind me, is there opportunities that are presented to veterans who have a disability beyond the normal programs to work, to provide education, workforce training to veterans generally?
There are, but again, not a lot of the veterans who, when they leave the service, right, know that there's a disability with them, right? It comes up years and years later. Myself, I went out and, despite some of my disabilities, I decided to take up blue collar work for the first 5 years post-service, and it caught up to me. You know, only after that time did I ever find out or ever attempt to use my GI Bill. And never once until many years later did I even hear about VR&E. So again, this should be pushed, you know, by the VA.
Thank you. I look forward to working with you and Paralyzed PVA.